Different kinds of educational institutions. We started off with myself and Bashar Singh talking about what it's like to have a chair of Sikh Studies within a research university at a major state university. Nikki talks about a small liberal arts college and how to infuse Sikh Studies there. Reiss Potterveld is going to join us. Reiss, who is the president of a graduate program based on an interfaith consortium of religious institutions. Remarkable kind of clustering, a consortium, one I was associated with a number of years at Berkeley. And Reiss is going to tell you how Sikhism might possibly fit into this remarkable interfaith consortium.
My thanks to Dr. Kapani and the Sikh Foundation as well, and for the wonderful evening last night, and my congratulations to the extraordinary women who won awards last night. That was a very special part of that evening. The Graduate Theological Union, if you had watched the timeline last night, we were in 2015, so we're kind of latecomers. But the school itself, it's the largest PhD program in interreligious and interdisciplinary education in the country. It has about 200 PhD students and about 100 master's degree students. And it began in 1962 by 8 or 9 Christian seminaries. And in those days, the early 1960s, that was a decade where Christians had enormous disagreements with each other and conflict. And so in the beginning, it were just Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox schools together, dealing with the issues of faith and order. But if you read the founding documents, it said ecumenical, that is, you know, the intra-Christian debates, and interfaith. And one of the 85-year-old Dominicans who was writing the initial statements said, I found this in a footnote, there will come a time when we must lift our eyes to Asia. So along the way, the school got started, and it established a Center for Jewish Studies in 1968. And then in 1985, an Institute of Buddhist Studies. Long gaps of time. 2007, a Center for Islamic Studies. When I came 4 years ago, and I viewed the landscape of what we had, I felt this sense of impoverishment, really, that we were trying to be interreligious and interdisciplinary, but where were the huge, monumental traditions of India? And so we have, I've had my foot glued to the accelerator since that time, and we have added Sikh Studies through some generous contributions from the Sikh Foundation and others. And we have added Jain Studies, and we have added a Center for Dharma Studies, which is primarily Hindu in its orientation. We have had Confucian and Taoist studies for a period of time. But in this interreligious development, we have, instead of trying to develop the centers ourselves, we have gone to communities and tried to work with people in the Bay Area and elsewhere who are from these faith communities and who are at the point in their own history and cultural time and context where they would like to have their traditions represented on these platforms of education. So it's, for us, a very exciting movement, and it's one that that does welcome the traditions that have not been studied for decades in the past. The thing that probably puts us somewhat apart from the rest of the academic world is that we have faculty there who are both scholars but also practitioners of that particular religion. You know, in all religions have gone through this. You start out with insiders talking to insiders, and then eventually the religion migrates elsewhere, and you have insiders introducing their tradition to outsiders, who you might think of as scholars. And then scholars began talking to themselves, so you have outsiders talking to outsiders. And then you have a natural progression, outsiders coming back to insiders, and in some cases with very ill effect, bringing a lens or a perspective on that tradition, which is seen by the insiders as a distortion or a misrepresentation. And all of religions have gone through this. I like to think of our own graduate educational platform as involving sort of all of those, but that the faculty, at least, are fixed in a particular tradition that they understand, worship, and follow, and yet they're also immensely critical scholars who are capable of looking at variant interpretations. Well, the way this is valuable, we talked about translation. In the King James Version of the Bible, which was done in 1611 by 47 male scholars, they came to a Hebrew word, kenegdo. It's in the creation story where Adam is alone, and Yahweh, the God in this story, says it is not good for Adam to be alone. We shall create kenegdo. Well, the 47 male scholars had two choices of language. They could translate it, kenegdo, as, and this is woman, as a helper fit for him. There's a viewpoint there. I see my spouse with apron on, preparing meals and being subservient. The other possibility was that which creates wholeness and completion. So which translation did they choose? Yeah. So, a helper fit for him became fixed in this tradition for hundreds of years. It influenced marriage ceremonies. It influenced views of gender. It influenced relationships. Scholars came along and said, well, we can look at historically why they chose a particular translation, but in going back into other Jewish texts written at approximately the same time, it turns out that actually that which creates wholeness was a more vibrant and utilized term. So I'm just saying that interpretation can also be a political event, if you will, influenced by values and considerations other than trying to get it right in terms of the text. So our scholars are both practitioners and they are insiders capable of achieving the outsider perspective. Now, most of the engagement of one religion with another has been dialogical. That is, two religions kind of facing off, looking at textual comparisons, as was mentioned, or looking at rituals, or looking at the way that the cultures have evolved and so forth. And it's an important kind of engagement, but it's been rather limited. In some cases in the United States, interreligious came to be just the Abrahamic faith. So you had Christians, Muslims, and Jews together as the primary correspondence about religion. But in the recent period at the Graduate Theological Union, as we've brought in the other world traditions, it has enlarged the conversation tremendously. And so we have, like, our Center for Islamic Studies has run 500 public programs in the last 5 years, and a fully 75% of them have been involving multiple religions, talking about things like sacred space, gender issues, end-of-life issues, chaplaincy issues, just a whole range of topics that have been important. So when we added Sikh Studies, our audiences are really multiple, as is true of all of these centers. Yes, there will be people who come to do an MA or a PhD in the Sikh traditions. But there are also about 800 students in the seminaries who will be religious leaders. And they are now, in the last decade, required to have exposure to a religion other than their own. So in the long-established Jewish Center, about 60 students each year take courses, even though they're not Jewish, because they realize that wherever they exercise their ministry or their professorship, whatever it is going to be in the nonprofit sector, they're living in a global context, and they need to have an awareness and an appreciation of traditions not their own. And so our hope, of course, is that we will have, and we had 4 students who were non-Sikh students taking a course during the past year. The second audience, that's the third audience, the students who study Sikh traditions intensively, those who come from other religions and take the course. But we are right on the edge of the University of California at Berkeley, and we have lots of wonderful partnership relationships with them, so that any of our students can take courses at the University of California at the graduate level, and their students can take our courses at the graduate level with no transfer of money. I mean, I would like a transfer of money over to our side, but we would be the losers in that. Well, we call the University of California a subsidiary of the Graduate Theological Union on our days when hubris has run mad. So the other audience, though, is the Sikh community itself. And part of the reason that we're trying to establish these foundational programs with communities is that we realize that our mission and our those whom we serve are larger than just degree-seeking students. So we intend, and we are developing right now, a 15 series, like 1-hour videos that will give an introduction to the Sikh religion and Sikh traditions. And this will be stored for students who can't take the course, but it'll also be something that we can use with, potentially with Gurdwaras or with other groups that would like to know more, even the general public. So that's something that we can do. It's like spilling over to the wider audience, and we realize that that's a part of our mission. Where am I? Okay. How am I doing then?
2 more minutes.
Oh, I think I just echoed someone else's. Now, okay, so we have these religions together, and they're not in silos. Now, what's changing is that we want to have them focus on some significant problem, so that all the religions can then focus on what you might call practical problem. Here's a whole bunch of them. I have a list of like 27. But we've picked out sustainability. And what we're doing is, you see the circles are student cohort groups. We're working with faculty. We've chosen sustainability as a primary issue. And we're requiring our students at the PhD and master's level, when they're working on a problem of sustainability, to also work with, somewhere in the world, a nonprofit or could be profit organization that's working on the same problem. So if it's focused on scarcity of water, or climate change, or social dislocation, religious conflict, the scholars, theorists must also be in touch with an organization on the ground that works on that, on solutions to that problem day by day. And we think that will change the nature of it. So we're calling it the Interreligious Master of Arts in Sustainability Studies. And the capstone project will require them to deal with, an organization could be in India, it could be in Indiana, that will help them to gain a more practical exposure. We've changed the whole curriculum. It used to be in the white preaching and worship, very Christian, Jewish. Now it's religion and practice. It used to be biblical studies, Old Testament, New Testament. Now it's sacred texts and their interpretation. So it's a much more inviting to all of the traditions, to the sense that they're not add-ons, but they're central, significant players in the education that we're pursuing. And then this gives you an idea that we're, as I said, preparing resources for the wider communities and developing programs that someone can just take sort of online and maintain their jobs, but still take a course or two here and there or work towards a certificate. So it's becoming much more open. Anyway, we are glad that the Sikh tradition is present, and we look forward to, yes, building that chair so it can be endowed in perpetuity. Thank you.